Continuing here on the afternoon rush, 7 to 30 the game, 97.5 FM, online ESPNCLT.com. Bobby Rosinski, Mark Yarbro with you. Talk some football right now as we head over to the guest line. Bring on NFL writer, CBS Sports, that is Garrett Podell. Garrett, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on. Always fun to talk ball as OTAs here are getting going, so we have a little bit of football to talk about.
Yeah, it's just a small tasting, but it's nice here as we start moving full steam ahead here to the 2025 season. And, Garrett, let's start here locally with the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, they make the waves in free agency on defense, make the first-round pick at wide receiver. Overall, how do you view this football team and expectations you have in 2025?
I think the Carolina Panthers are a team that could certainly contend for a wild card spot. I like, Bryce Young. He finished the end of the season really well. He had over 10 total touchdowns and no turnovers in his team's final 3 games. Now, I understand the context of he did this against the Arizona Cardinals, the Buccaneers, and Carolina got smoked in that game 48-14, and then in a win against the Falcons in Week 18. So 2 of those defenses that weren't very good at the end of the year. But the other guys to do that, Drew Brees in 2019, Kirk Cousins in 2015, Peyton Manning in 2006. So will he be able to carry it over? I mean, the drafting of Tetairoa McMillan, 8th overall, should certainly help. He was somebody, I'm here based in Dallas, that the Cowboys were really high on and were disappointed when he did go before their pick at pick number 12. Him going to Carolina probably resulted in the subsequent trade for George Pickens. But as far as the Panthers, I think they'll definitely be better this year. Signed Rico Dowdle from Dallas, who was one of the most efficient runners in football, along with Chuba Hubbard. So that should be a fun 1-2 punch. You would think Leggett would be a little better with McMillan in tandem with him, kind of taking away some of the coverage. And defensively, I like what they did, some of the additions, adding Trayvon Merrick, a durable corner from TCU this offseason, who played the most defensive snaps of anybody on the Raiders. Like the Tershawn Wharton pick, he was someone who in a smaller sample size, rotational piece at D-tackle, who was solid. It'll be interesting to see him in a bigger role. I like the additions they've made. Now, the defense certainly has to get better. They were the worst defense by most metrics in football last year, but maybe another year for some of the younger guys, a little bit better health, and the Panthers could be feisty perhaps in 2025.
Gary, you're talking about Bryce Young. If you were just looking at the projected 32 starters going into this season, where does Bryce fall for you right now?
Bryce would probably fall for me. It's tough because if you look at his overall body of work, you would say maybe he's low 20s. But if we're just talking the last 3 games against 2 bad defense, you'd say maybe inside the top 20. So I guess if you average him, maybe I'd put him at like 21, 22 with the opportunity to get higher, but needs to show a little bit more outside of the last 3 games of the season. He was a ton better when he returned from his benching for Andy Dalton in the middle of the season. They averaged about 10 more points per game in his starts, 23.1 versus 12.3 when he came back from the benching. And he played a lot better on 20 total touchdowns, only 8 turnovers versus 12 total touchdowns to 19 turnovers before he got benched in his career. So clearly the benching helped him reset and got him recalibrated in the exact right way that the Panthers would have hoped. So I'd probably put him at like low 20s in the NFL out of 32 starters.
Garrett, you mentioned that the Panthers could possibly contend for a wild card spot last year. I don't think anybody had the Commanders on their radar before the season started, but they certainly burst onto the scene with a rookie quarterback, made it all the way to the NFC Championship game. I'm not saying you think the Panthers could get that far, but is there a team that you look at that could remind us of what we saw the Commanders do last year?
That's a great question. And if we look at the Commanders' formula, they went from being the year before last in 2023, the worst defense in football by almost every metric, which is what Carolina was last year. And then the big difference was they went from the worst defense to about average. They were like 16, 17, 18, and a lot of defensive metrics last year. And then Jaden Daniels was terrific and won Offensive Rookie of the Year. So the formula for the Commanders that could be replicated is 8 A-level quarterback play and like average defense. So when you look at teams that missed the playoffs last year, I would say it could very well be somebody in Jaden Daniels' draft class in the Chicago Bears and Caleb Williams and those guys up north in Chicago, which I know is a sore subject for maybe your listeners here in Carolina because of the Bryce Young trade. They missed out on the opportunity to select Caleb Williams, in essence choosing Bryce Young over Caleb Williams. But with Ben Johnson coming over there from Detroit, the Lions were the highest scoring offense in football during his 10 years OC since 2022, and they really reinforced their offensive line, which is a big issue. Caleb Williams took 68 sacks last year, which was tied for the third most in a season ever. So better offensive line, maybe a little younger weapons, Keenan Allen out, Luther Burden, second-round pick in. I could see maybe Chicago taking a leap and being that team. They're probably the highest odds to do that just because of the new staff and really fixing their biggest issue of offensive line. They already had a decent defense. So they would probably fit the mold the most. But, maybe Carolina can replicate that also. We'll see. But I'd probably put the Bears as more likely.
Yeah, we saw the owners' meetings this week, and one thing that didn't even make it to a vote, the Lions decided to kind of just do away with their proposal about possible reseeding in the playoffs. Is that something you think? I know a lot of people think once you get to 18 games, that's probably going to happen. But would you like to see reseeding come when it comes to the playoffs instead of just you win your division, you automatically get a home game?
I would. I think winning your division needs to mean something. I think it's cool that if you're the best in your region or your area, there should be a reward for that. And so certainly, obviously, automatic playoff spot, regardless of what your record is. I mean, no offense to the NFC South, but there have been a number of years where their division winner is 500, below 500, and, is locked into that 4 seed as the worst team that's got a home game. I think the division winner should obviously still make the playoffs, but I think it makes sense to reward teams that win games on the field. I mean, you look at last year's postseason, the Green Bay Packers were the NFC's 7 seed, and they won 11 games, and they had to go on the road to Philadelphia, who was the 2 seed in the first round. They put up a decent fight. They lost by 12 points. It was a 7-point game in the fourth quarter. But, if Green Bay gets to start their postseason run not against Philadelphia, do they make a little bit of a run, and does their season go a lot differently? I mean, you got teams like that who would probably love to see that flipped around. And I think it makes sense. Reward the W's and L's on the field. Division winners should still get an automatic playoff spot, but not necessarily a home game. I would agree with that.
Talking with Garrett Podell, NFL writer, CBS Sports. You mentioned Philadelphia. You mentioned Green Bay. The Tush Push does survive at least one more season. What'd you make of the vote, and do you think this will be it here with one more year in 2025?
I was surprised that it was still around. It just seemed like there was a lot of sentiment around the league that the play was rugby-like, didn't look like modern-day football, injury risk of it, someone getting hurt in that pile-up, their neck, spine, back kind of injuries, probably higher when you're doing a play like that. Missed it by 2 votes, 22-10. Was the final count. They needed 75% of the league to vote to get rid of it. I was surprised. I feel like it will go away eventually. And honestly, how a lot of sports rules get changed these days, it's a reactionary league. Like, you can't hit the quarterback low anymore. Why is that? Because Tom Brady, the year after he won NFL MVP in 2007 and the Patriots had the perfect regular season, almost had the perfect season, losing the Super Bowl to the Giants, he tore his ACL week 1 of the 2008 season when he got hit low by a blitzing defensive back. So I could easily see someone gets hurt on that tush push play, whether it's a lineman or quarterback, and their spine or back gets significantly injured. I think at that point we would definitely see a rule change, and maybe over time it eventually goes away. That's pretty close, but I think it will go away, and it might take somebody getting seriously hurt for that to happen.
Garrett, we know what's on the line for the Giants this year. There's jobs on the line here with Brian Dable and Joe Shane, respectively. Their jobs are hanging in the balance here. They've got 3 quarterbacks there. It figures Russell Wilson will be your starter, but they did draft Jackson Dart. Along, they've got Jameis Winston there as well. I guess my question is, do you see a point in the season where Brian Dable could go to Jackson Dart and make him his starter?
I certainly do. Mark. I would say that that's a very high possibility, but my guess is it would probably be later on in the season for them because Joe Shane made comments saying, yeah, we drafted Jackson Dart, but we think it's going to be very helpful for him to sit. So, I mean, when you hear comments like that, that doesn't really sound like somebody who's got a real shot at beating out Russell Wilson in a quarterback competition. They have a week 14 bye. So that's a kind of a later season bye. I don't know if they wait that long, but a lot of times in the NFL, you'll see quarterback changes like that take place like just before or during the bye week. Then you got the extra week off to kind of recalibrate your scheme and game plan to the new quarterback that comes in there. And so honestly, looking at their schedule right now, maybe Monday Night Football against the New England Patriots. That's a Week 13 game. The Patriots, they're a much improved team. They spent the most money in free agency, but they had the 4th overall pick in the draft this past year. They still had they cleaned up some of their holes, but they still have some holes defensively and protecting Drake May up front that they hope to have solved through the draft. Maybe Week 13, or if not, Week 15 after that bye week in Week 14, perhaps.
Well, Garrett, we have to ask you about some Cowboys happenings here, and obviously the big news coming out of Big D in the offseason so far has been the addition of George Pickens. Do you think him and CeeDee Lamb coexist and this thing can work there?
I absolutely do. I was at the Cowboys' first practice that was open to the media earlier this week on Tuesday, their second OTA practice of the season. And I had the chance to speak to quarterback Dak Prescott and both CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens after practice. And everyone is all smiles about the George Pickens trade. You know, obviously you hear about what he was up to with the Steelers, and Mike Tomlin, after a win against the Bengals last year, challenged him publicly to grow up after he had a couple personal foul penalties. But in Dallas, it's off to a smooth start. Head coach Brian Schottenheimer said that he's been really impressed with Pickens' maturity, especially in the meetings, taking notes, asking questions. So he's off to a good start in that department with the coaching staff. And then in terms of his teammates, yeah, they're all kind of embracing him. And CeeDee Lamb said to me, this could kind of be a situation where when he came in as a rookie, Amari Cooper taught him a lot of nuances about being in the NFL. And Amari Cooper, he still thanks this day for the impact that he's had on Lamb's career. And he said, now maybe I can do the same for George Pickens, because Lamb's an all-pro, been one of the top 5, top 10 receivers in football each of the last 2-3 seasons. So, yeah, arms wide open. And stylistically, I think it could work really nicely, because I wrote an article about this on CBSSports.com, came out Monday. If you look at their reception heat maps, according to True Media, where the vast majority of their target volume is, Lamb's is a lot of over-the-middle stuff and intermediate routes in the middle of the field, which is something Pickens told me he's already learning and getting tips on from Lamb. And George Pickens, over the last 2 years, his 16.7 yards per catch are the most in the NFL, and a lot of that is deep vertical down the sidelines. So their games are kind of complementary and could mesh really well, because the styles don't necessarily conflict with each other and how they've been used.
Garrett Podell, NFL writer, CBS Sports. Garrett, we always appreciate your time here in Charlotte. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me on. Always fun to talk ball with you guys.
Thank you very much, Garrett. Hope you have a great weekend. There you go, Garrett Podell, NFL writer, CBS Sports. We'll take a timeout. More to come right here, 7:30 The Game.